Welcome back to Break the Silo. We have a great show for you tonight. The title of this episode is Talibanistan. I guess we can jump into the first topic, which will be Afghanistan and what's going on there with the Taliban. So, if you guys haven't been watching anything on the news anywhere or haven't turned the radio on anywhere,
if you live under a rock,
if you
actual literal rock.
If you live in a cave in Afghanistan, then you might not have heard about this, but otherwise, U.S. is pulling out and Taliban's taken back over. That's the basic story. Back when Biden announced that they were going to pull out, he was asked directly by a reporter, do you think that the Taliban is it a given that the Taliban will take back over in Afghanistan? And he said no. We've, trained 300,000 troops there. They're armed. They can, they'll fight back, etc. The Taliban only has like 25,000, right? Something like that. And then there were then the reports from the intelligence agency came out, some weeks back that said, yeah, they do expect the Taliban will take back over, but it'll take months.
Yeah.
And then it took 2 days.
Yep.
So Taliban basically took all of Afghanistan. Basically the Afghanis that the U.S. were supporting, it seems like just handed it over. Like they didn't even really
a lot of
fight.
times,
So,
yeah.
So I figured, we could talk about it a little bit, see what you guys think. Chris, let's start with you, I guess. What are your thoughts on what's going on over there? Should we have pulled out, and did we make a mistake?
Yeah. Actually, yes to both. So I think my position is very, very, very simple. We should have pulled out. Like, I do believe that there was no reason for us to continue being there. To use Biden's words, it's definitely a brilliant PR statement, but it's like, we're not nation builders, right? Like, that's our goal. Like, our goal, at least in Afghanistan, is not as a nation building. It's not like they're a colony of ours. It's not like they're another state. They were a place that we had a military mission 20 years ago that lasted 20 years. So we were always meant to not stay. And even Trump actually initiated the pullout, which I think was the right decision too. So I'm not even criticizing that. What I'm criticizing is that we did not take our citizens out first. Like, the very first thing we should have done was take out the interpreters, our citizens, the people who qualify for citizenship through aiding the military. All of those people should have been taken out first before our troops left. And that is my biggest criticism. Also, so yeah, Biden dropped the ball in here. Like, he tried to do a good thing. It's really cute. Let's get them out by September 11th. But
yeah,
it was a really bad decision the way he executed it. It was a good decision, incredibly poorly executed. Is
it Biden that's executing this?
It's him and his administration, without a doubt. I mean, they said, like, let's get them out by September 11th. Let's pull our troops out. We had a lot of wishful thinking, right? Like, against Democrat and Republican advice, like both sides in the House and the Senate, with the exception of super loyalists, like that just always want to word this and spin it in a good light. The reality is like, he was warned, like, this is an issue. There's immigration backups. There's visa issues. There's issues with, like, getting people out to the timelines were never matching up.
And could we not put together some sort of a camp or something where all of these refugees could go and await this process to go through instead of leaving them in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't have done any of those things, right? Why did we have to wait till the last hour of the last day, where now we literally have Americans and people who are eligible to become Americans crowding the last airport? Like, we were clearly wrong in how quick the Taliban was able to take over. Like, that, I think, surprised everybody. But again, they were warned well in advance by Democrat and Republican aides and apolitical aides from the military saying, hey, we should probably get these people out first. It was a bad decision.
How much of it is on Biden and his administration? And you can answer this too, Nate. I'm just spitballing. And how much of it's on the Pentagon and the people that did the evacuation planning? They had months, right? I mean, the date was known from when Trump signed the agreement. Biden extended it even further, and action wasn't being taken. And from what Biden had said, a big part of the delay was the fact that the Trump administration wasn't cooperating on this, and that they had to, basically redo stuff, and that caused a lot of time.
Yeah, so as with everything, this is much more complicated than than at first glance. I think Biden certainly has a lot of culpability with this, but it's not actually what people initially think is. Like you could say, well, he botched this pullout. He didn't plan ahead sufficiently, and that is true, but not
Look,
the way that
most
people.
of us are only here because of botched pullouts. I'm just saying.
Yay! All right, well, speak for yourself, there, buddy. I come from a good Christian family with family planning values, and
Chris. I was an accident.
I
boy.
was for sure. My siblings also. My 10-year younger than me sister, for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Ooh.
Yeah, you can tell those little outliers. Yeah. Anyways, speaking of accidents, so Biden here's
campaign and election.
yeah. No. I have a funny article about that in a second, but
Go for it.
But so what Biden did wrong wasn't the whole pulling out thing, right? So I have some opinions about whether we should or shouldn't stay, but the actual planning of pulling out was actually kind of reasonable. The reason why there wasn't a mass evacuation planned for this time period in the preceding months was because the Afghanis specifically asked him not to do that because it would create a crisis of confidence. Right, so basically, if the Afghanis saw a whole bunch of all the interpreters fleeing the country, all the Americans fleeing the country, all this other kind of stuff, they said, okay, this will cause a crisis of confidence, and our troops will lay down their arms.
And
now,
then my favorite part about this, though, was like, yeah, that might have caused some panic, but then here's the Afghanistan president fleeing the country.
Yeah, so here's what Biden did wrong, though, right? So I don't actually fault him for listening to the Afghanis on that one. But here's what he did wrong. What he did was he still pulled out their military support. So what this means, in effect, for those of you who don't know, the United States was supporting Afghanistan not with actual soldiers, but with air support and technical support, right? And so what Biden did was he pulled out the United States' air support, right, which the Afghanis had been trained around using, right? So they had been trained around the tactics of being able to rely on air support. He pulled our air support out. He pulled the contractors who were maintaining the Afghanis' air support out, and all the other technical support that they had. So Biden, while on the one hand I don't blame him for not planning ahead for this precipitous collapse, he on the other hand caused this precipitous collapse by pulling out all of the American contractor support. So it's like, I mean, he owns this either way, right? So either this is him just botching it at a high level, or it was like he technically caused this by making terrible decisions.
Can you speak more on that? Because especially because you're literally a veteran, right? So you have at least more information than I do. Much more, presumably. So what does that mean? Like when you say like they're trained on air support, they're trained on air equipment, what does that mean for someone who has no idea or military contracts? Are these people in the Middle East? Are these our soldiers? Like, can you just like give some scenarios? Because I don't personally know, and I imagine some of our viewers would value this as well.
So the part I can speak the least to is the infantry tactics, because I was never infantry. I was in the Navy, so I can talk overview for that, and then for the technical maintenance, I can talk about that. So from what I understand, the Afghan military was, first of all, was about 300,000 people, from what I understand. So I still don't understand how they got overtaken by such a small force. But all of their troop movements and tactics, right? All of their leaders, generals, platoon leaders, like whatever it is, they were all trained in a certain way, right? And tactics that are built around certain weapons only work if you have those weapons. And in this case, that's air superiority, right? And so not only is the loss of their air force a morale blow, but it's also they are actually far less effective at this point, right? So just think like their special forces were really high-grade special forces. They were absolutely, they were in the fight 110, 120%. They were getting almost no sleep, but they didn't have air support, right? So they wouldn't have ready evacuation. They wouldn't have ground fire. They wouldn't have any sort of, again, just generally speaking, air support. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is the technical side of things. The contractors that Biden pulled out that were maintaining their equipment people don't understand. If you just haven't thought about it before, or you just don't know, military helicopters, any jets, all of these things need to be maintained to a very, very high degree, right? It's a very professional thing. There's rigorous training involved. There's rigorous and very detailed procedures. I guarantee they're all written in English, and they need to be done every time a jet or a helicopter flies. So basically, it's unsafe to fly if you don't do this maintenance every single time. Biden pulled all of those people out. None of this maintenance was getting done. All of these jets and helicopters are now very unsafe to fly, and can't be flown safely. So I heard stories of the Afghan technicians that were left there. They were literally calling American contractors, the Americans who had left. They were calling them and doing Zoom calls to try to do the maintenance on the helicopters and jets. So that I lay at the foot of the Biden administration. From what I understand, he made that decision himself.
So to kind of ask then, why is that on him and not on the military complex that was there for the last 20 years, ineffectively training all of these troops and the military group that was there? I mean, was the idea that we were going to just stay there forever and we should never train them appropriately? And then why is it on Biden to who came in and just supported the policy that was put in place before him, then went to extend it and say, look, we need more time. We can't get out safely. I mean, we've known this for what, almost a year now, if not more, that this was happening. That's enough time, in my opinion, to train people for these positions, to prepare for this.
Yeah, so no,
why is it on Biden? I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just asking.
So no, a year is not enough time. You need much longer. You probably need 3. You'd probably need 1 to 3 years to become an apprenticeship, somebody who can do this maintenance under the direction of somebody else, and then you need 5 to 10 years to become probably an expert, right? So. Yeah, I mean, the systems are incredibly complex, and it's, again, really high degrees or low degrees of tolerance for, as you know, Tim, you're an engineer, right? Low degrees of tolerance for any kind of errors inside those engines, right? You suck any kind of debris and you leave a wrench in there, you forget
if it takes you 3 years to remember not to leave a wrench inside a jet engine, then
like, speak for yourself, man. We're trying here. I said 1 to 3, first of all. So, I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. I think if the politicians have been promising to leave for years and years on end, right? To be fair to the generals, I suppose, politicians have been saying we're going to get. I mean, Obama ran on the platform of getting us out of Afghanistan, right? And that was 2012.
I mean, he reduced. He brought a lot of troops home, but not a full exit.
Right.
He's known for the surge, my friend. He sent more over there.
Oh, that's true. He did actually do that.
He did. And then. We did never truly shut down Guantanamo Bay. Still waiting for that.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how I feel about that. I do feel about that. I have to
study up on that. I have to study up on it to know, but
I'm sure it sounded great to the people, and then he got, as the president, he's like, "Oh, that's who's in there. Never mind."
I mean, I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate, but also I kind of align with this belief as well, and that I support Biden in this. He came out and said, look, this was on the table before I got here. I'm going to support the policies that were in place when I got here. From a foreign policy standpoint, to me, that's fucking critical. We have an election every 4 years, and if as another country you're like, well, I'll make an agreement with U.S. this year, but who knows what's going to happen next year because there's an election, right? Fair. Like you can't operate like that. You have to follow through with what was done, even if it wasn't you that did it per se. I mean, yeah, there's some cases I think that things have to be changed, but by and large, I think if we can, we need to stand by what we promised as a country. Yeah. And so I feel like that's important. And then second, when he did come out and say, like, we can't leave by when we promised safely, we're extending it to this date. That wasn't Biden per se that came out and just picked the date. I guarantee you, generals, advisors, everybody was saying, yeah, we can do it by this date, right? And so he picked it. He did it. And I truly feel like people drug their feet. people expected that we were going to back out and just actually stay like we have in the past, and nobody did their job, and nobody prepared the Afghani forces as they were supposed to, and nobody planned appropriately to get people out when we actually left. And then we left, and everyone was like, "Oh, what the fuck? Where'd they go?"
It was just a couple weeks ago, right? We were talking about how the Afghan government literally thought we were bluffing. They really didn't think we were going to leave.
Yeah, so when they found out that we were going to leave, they were begging the president to keep the troops there until winter, because apparently there's a fighting season and the Taliban doesn't fight during the winter. I take it it's a weather thing, not like a cultural thing. So like that's another kind of thing. Like he was told, he was advised, like, I mean, if you pull out now, the Taliban's, it's their prime fighting season. Like, so, you know, the Afghanis did ask the president to stay until winter started so that they could have, you know, that time to prepare themselves and build up their defenses. And he also ignored that too. So that's also kind of at his feet. But I'm coming down hard on Biden, you know, because it's kind of my job here. I'm literally 50-50. Chris, I'm kind of curious what you've seen, because I've noticed a pattern, like a very, very stark pattern, and it's that the fringes of each party, and I don't mean that in sort of the negative sense. I mean, you know, our populists and the far leftists both agree that the pulling out was a good thing and should have been done, and, you know, could have happened way sooner, et cetera, et cetera. And then the core parties, the neocons, or just like the normal conservatives, the mainstream conservatives, the mainstream news on the left, like all, like just even MSNBC, like CNN, like all of these people are super critical of this pullout. So it's crazy because we have it seems to me, and tell me if you agree with me, we have a rift that's not left right on this. We have a rift that's mainstream and, you know, let's say, I guess we could say populist, even though it's not technically not the correct term for the far left. But is that what you've seen? I don't know what if you've been keeping too much tabs on your people.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting. I have been keeping pretty big tabs. I actually am like pretty synced into like the Twitter resistance groups, which I love. Yeah. Which doesn't really make sense anymore because Trump's not the president. But I do support a lot of, like, there are a lot of beliefs that I overlap with. So I generally do follow them because I'm like, yeah, I want to know what's going on with my party. And also, like, it's interesting. I think it's like a true, like, pulse check.
Yeah.
So right now, 3 things are happening. First, people are absolutely ignoring it. There's some silence on the airwaves. I think there's definitely some silence where, like, normally, like, I would see, like, bigger eruptions. The second thing that I'm seeing is people are deferring to things such as, you know, I'm pulling up a tweet right now. I won't say the name, but it's like, fact, the Taliban leader who has taken over Afghanistan was just recently let out of prison at Trump's request. We're seeing stuff like that, like blaming Trump administration decisions. And then we're actually seeing a lot of accountability tweets that I'm personally on the side of. It's like, where, hey, we agreed on this. Like, we like that we're leaving Afghanistan. It is a absolute humanitarian crisis that we have just instilled, and it's a moral obligation to help all the people who helped us. And like, I think a lot of us on the left are very upset with that. Like, we're seeing this as like, we just established, we manufactured a mini refugee crisis, and didn't do anything to these people, and these people literally helped our country. Like, that is and I see
they helped our country
a little bit further.
Or helped their own country.
They probably both. I think you can spin it either way. I mean, they help their military, like the interpreters.
I'm not trying to spin it. I'm trying to understand it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these people, to my understanding, where I need to look up more in detail, I believe when someone does something with foreign aid to our country, such as becoming an interpreter or a nurse, they get an automatic pathway to citizenship. If like, not a guaranteed pathway, but like the doorway opens for it. And additionally, there are dual citizens over there that are part of both countries, because obviously it's incredibly helpful to have people. Our country's a melting pot, right? There's definitely people in our military that have dual citizenship that were over there, or at least they went over there as a contract or a job to help at an extraneous way to the military. And those are the people we're leaving behind. And finally, I'll add a bonus fourth. There's a lot of people on the further left that I would say the whole party agrees with this. We're all upset because we're like, hey, like what's going to happen to the women in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
There is a pocket of our party. I actually don't even know where the pinpoint is. I don't think it's far left. It's just a pocket of some people here and everywhere that are like, wow, we really just screwed over women of an entire country. We should have stayed because like there is women's rights. So that is I don't think that's not sectioned to just one part of the left. It's scattered throughout. There's no like general, hey, just the far left is saying this or just the moderates. It's kind of spread out.
Yeah, I mean, and you gotta then decide where's our responsibility as far as protecting the world from their own culture. And I'm not saying that I am one way or the other. I'm just throwing it out there as a comment. Like, it's something you have to think about. How many American soldiers do we want to say, we allocate their lives to providing cultural influence for other countries? It's a tough question.
We weren't exactly losing very many troops. So, Ben Shapiro has actually been
Please say what I think you're going to say. Please say what I think you're going to say.
The last American died a year and a half ago?
Yeah. It's because we've had a fucking peace treaty.
No, we have not.
Yeah, look it up. And if you look over that last year and a half when we weren't fighting with them, it's they were gaining ground the entire time because there was no battles. We weren't fighting.
So the Afghani army has been fighting. They've suffered, I believe, at this point, 70,000 casualties. So they have been fighting.
We just.
Yeah, we didn't lose anybody, not because of any treaty, but because we were doing support. We were support roles only.
I think too, for what it's worth.
Are you pulling up a link? Because a link would be good.
Yeah, if you want to see a link.
No, not you. Tim seems like he's researching hard. Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. They went right back to fighting.
They did. We did not. They were fighting inside the country and doing some battles, but we were not really involved. That was part of the deal. We were going to stop fighting. We were going to pull out.
That peace deal got ripped up about a month after it got. That was nothing. That was absolutely nothing.
I wasn't planning on talking about this, so I don't have it all pulled up, but I'll find more. Yeah.
For what it's worth, I think there's a huge argument on the side of like, hey, this is not our country, and therefore, unless like genocide starts occurring, then it's not our role to take a humanitarian response. Like, we are not there for humanitarian reasons. We're there for military.
Yeah. I used to think that, but I'm leaning a lot more towards. We were already there. I think it would have been minimal effort to stay there in our support capacity, and the price was small to maintain human rights, right? And there was, trust me, I have so many problems with, like, the question about whether they deserve it or not is actually a valid one, right? So there's the whole bunch of schoolgirls who aren't going to go to school anymore. There's people who are going to be getting beaten under Sharia law, and it's going to be it's the 8th century come again, right?
Have you seen some of the photos? Like, it's absolutely like this. Like, let's see if I could, like, like, people are currently graffitiing over their what's it called? Over portraits of women. That they have in their storefronts because they don't want to be murdered because they were portraying women without like the proper like clothing. It's absolutely insane. It is really, really sad, and I think
so it's like, look. So I mean, we can't spend too much more time on this because we have to move into our main topics. But like, it's like I'm. On the one hand, it's fantastic. Great. The Taliban's back, so they're going to outlaw the dancing boys. So, there won't be systematic grooming of young boys anymore in Afghanistan. That's fantastic. Now it's just going to happen to women, right? So it's like...
I'm interested.
Here's an article from a year ago. Sorry to cut you off. I want to make sure we get this out. This is an article from a year ago. I can put it on screen, actually. I'll read some of it, though. It starts off with, no U.S. troops have died in combat in Afghanistan for a year as of Monday, so this is back in February. But the Taliban have threatened to target them again if Washington opts to keep international forces in the country after the May withdrawal deadline. So obviously saying that the reason that the soldiers aren't dying is because of this peace deal. And they talk about the last soldier that died, and then they say weeks after their deaths, the U.S. and Taliban signed a deal under which Washington pledged to fully withdraw troops by May 1st, provided the Taliban held up its agreement, including to stop attacks on foreign troops, etc., etc. We didn't have any losses because we weren't fighting.
Okay, and the losses before that?
I don't know how many or how frequent.
That's fine. We don't have to get into that.
I love your point, though. Just like to not to wrap up, unless we want to, but to make a quick point, I'm interested by your position, and I do because I'm a little surprised. I just thought that you were going to be. I think the right is often more like America first. So, like let's
the populists are, yeah. Well, I'm not a very good populist.
you actually seem to have like that Reagan like world police vibe. So I do partially agree to that. I do partially agree to that. I mean, now that you make that point, it's like, yeah, I don't see why we couldn't have kept like some bases there. Because really, the reality is 3,000 to 5,000 troops is not deterring. Like we wouldn't, if the Taliban really wanted to take 5,000 troops, they could. But the backlash would be overwhelming. We would immediately like go in the full blown, onslaught to Germany vibe. It'd be like Pearl Harbor. So yeah.
Except in the mountains.
I don't see why we couldn't have kept some people there. You're right. I changed my opinion.
Yeah, it's tough.
Because that wasn't the agreement that was made, is my belief on why they did that.
Yeah, maybe it was a dumb agreement. I don't even remember what I thought anymore. So, look, it's complicated.
Trump did it. You probably loved it.
I don't know. I don't remember what I thought at this point.
We'll have to go back and look. I don't know if
I know. I may have actually said it on air. For all of our thousands of fans, go ahead and rifle back through. I might have said something about we've been there long enough.
We weren't doing podcasts at the time.
To our hardcore fans,
I suppose. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I mean, one thing I do think is interesting is that both the left media and the right media are against this now. Right? They're both like,
that's what I was saying. It's the
population
media
is not. Which is really interesting, right? So the populace is not. The populace is overwhelmingly for pulling out.
Okay, so for pulling out, but the interesting thing is that this has kicked his approval ratings way down, probably because of the way that it unfolded rather than the actual action itself.
Yeah, and I that's a point that I think is I'm definitely in the agreement of you're the leader, the buck stops with you. I'm not saying he's not responsible at all, right? Don't take my talking points that way. But I do think that a large part of this isn't really on him or his administration. To like at the standpoint of he says
100% the Taliban's fault, right? I mean, we could go there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. It's your fault you did it. No.
Right.
No,
now,
I mean,
and then after that you can mediate all the way up to 200% blame, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. One, I think he was provided bullshit information from his advisors and probably in the intelligence agency. I think we've been getting bullshit information from them for years, if not decades, on what's going on over there. I believe Biden truly believed he was telling the truth when he said that we are leaving a military force of 300,000 to defend against a force of 75,000, a military force that the best military in the world has spent 2 decades training. Well, that might not be the total truth. I don't think we probably started training them the moment we got there. So let's say a decade training, right? So from that perspective, if he believed that, and that's what his advisors and the intelligence community was telling him, that this is what we'd been doing, which is probably what I think they were saying, because my feeling is that they want to stay there. They want this permanent war. It's good for a lot of businesses.
Like they wouldn't be doing their jobs if they weren't enjoying it, I guess,
So I think, and so they're like, yeah, look, we're effective. Look at all these things we've done, right? So they're giving them these bullshit data, and he's like, yeah, great. So they're prepared we can pull out. And then when we pull out, you realize that, like, we spent 20 years or 10 years and $1 trillion, I think it was, something like that. And literally 2 days, a force 1/3 the size of what we trained was able to just take over. And a lot of it was just handed to them. And I think it's a combination of, I don't think the people really wanted our culture, a good portion of them.
They don't have a national story. Yeah, look, it's a complicated issue, and hopefully we'll get back to this next week, and we'll
you can do a deep dive.
Have more to share. Yeah, so maybe tune in next week. We'll have some more on that. I think for now we definitely gotta transition to our more domestic topics that we chose for tonight. These have actually been pushed off. One of them has been pushed off 3 weeks, and two of the other ones have been pushed off 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm not.
I just gotta say, it's so funny.
Anymore.
We
It's because we stuck.
There's nothing like a good hostile takeover of a country to make your domestic topics look a little small. So Chris is going to complain about the rich coming up, and then after that I'm going to complain about loony leftists. So enjoy the show.
We love the rich. We don't. I almost wish like I could just like, that new Bo Burnham song, like Jeffrey Bezos. I wish I could just play that right now because it's like, come on, Jeffrey, you can do it. It's so great.
Everybody says it's catchy. It was okay.
It's absolutely phenomenal. It's such a troll song, because like you just listen to it and then it talks about like him like eating the wives of Warren Buffett, and I'm like, wow, all right, we just went from pretty demonic there. But anyways, so my topic today is very much in line with Jeffrey Bezos eating the wives of the other rich, and that is that we should be taxing the rich. I'm going to make semi of a philosophical argument, and I'm also going to make a proposed argument of how we can actually do that, and then I'm going to open the floor for everybody. So if I am talking for too long, just blast Jeffrey Bezos music, and I will stop, because I will cower in fear of the name of the great beholder of wealth. So essentially, I believe that the reality is our country needs to generate more tax income. We need more federal and state revenue. It's non-negotiable. We are in a deficit. We are constantly increasing our wealth.
We could just cut our military budget.
I was going to say we could spend less, but then he went with that heresy.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have the debt. We also we do have increased spending obligations, and there's the reality is, can we spend less in certain places? Sure, but the reality is, we also have learned recently the fun thing that is when you spend productively, it actually doesn't collapse your economy. At least as long as you're the world's wealthiest economy. Maybe not the truth for Greece, but it was the truth for us because our debt ceiling is higher than our GDP of the year. Unless that's changed, but the last time I checked, that was the case. Sorry, Greece. So maybe they shouldn't have lied to get into the euro. Anyways, when we look at the wealthy, there's a moral argument that I would like to take that I think a lot of us on the left believe is true. This isn't just like a financial argument. This is a moral one. It's that once you've accumulated a massive amount of wealth, to be determined, typically when I think of massive amounts of wealth, I think of like billionaires or like close to being a billionaire. And basically, it's the notion that the rules of like small businesses should adapt to those of big businesses and those of big individuals. That somebody with so much money is now it's not just they created a business. It's their business now has a larger social responsibility to their country. Because that person has acquired so much wealth, they've acquired this great standard of living, and they utilize the benefits of our country to continuously accrue that money. So for example, the novel age-old thing is the roads, right? Everybody uses roads. Jeffrey Bezos uses roads every day. There's like an Amazon delivery thing right in my front porch right now. Like, I paid for Manchester roads for Jeffrey Bezos's car to drive up and deliver me my book. So there's and we also know that the wealthy don't really. It's complicated, but taxes are it's complex, right? There's a lot of tax loopholes. There's a lot of ways to get out of business. What we know, so according to the Congressional Budget Office, we know that the best 1% of Americans, so Mr. Bezos, saw their income before taxes nearly triple before the 1979 and 2016. If you look at any graph, we basically know that income inequality is at an all-time high for our country right now. We know that the top 1% of Americans have slightly more wealth than the bottom 90%, as Bernie would say. And that's actually from the Federal Reserve, though. So that's not just like that's not coming off of Huffington Post. That's just the Federal Reserve. We also know, and this is not to, please don't pigeonhole this, and please don't go down a rabbit hole. I'm barely going to talk about this because I actually don't really care about this that much. It's just a fun factoid. Under current law, only 2 out of every 1,000 people who die are wealthy enough to trigger the estate tax, or about 1,900 estates in 2080. So the estate tax actually doesn't capture that many people as it's currently written. I don't necessarily care, but I do think that it is an important thing that we should be. The reason why I don't care is because there's more productive ways of taxing. So again, to recap really quick, and then I'll make my final point. The moral obligation is that someone with massive amounts of wealth has no obligation to society. It's that, to me, I think a lot on the left would agree to this. I know you're going to have a seizure by me just saying it. But the reality is, if somebody has billions of dollars at their disposal, I don't understand how you can have that amount of money and not give progressively. And one of the ways that we give is through taxing, right? Because taxes pay for social services, they pay for the military, they pay for different departmental values that we see, like through health and human services. We pay for the roads, we pay for education. It's a way of giving, right? It's also a democratic way of giving, which I really want to emphasize. And again, I want to re-emphasize that statement. It is a democratic way of giving. A fun book right here. It's called Winner Takes All. It's this phenomenal book that I've been going through again. And it really talks about how philanthropy is often very pigeonholed. It's actually not as effective as we want it to be. And I can go more into that if you guys care to hear more, but
we'll talk about that in a bit because one of my counterpoints will be philanthropy. So let's get into that when I bring it up.
So my last point, and this is from the Washington Post that I think I was reading a bunch of articles. This is the one that was my most appealing to, and I think most people on the left would agree to this, is that we know wealth taxes don't work. They just don't work, right? There's no way to regulate it. There's no way to accountability it. The wealthiest people in society just simply hire the best lawyers and accountants, and boom, they avoid the wealth tax. That's what
happens. And spend more money on the lawyers than they would save in tax.
Lawyers love wealth taxes.
Right, yeah.
So what we can do, though, is I personally think we should repeal the tax provisions of 2017. I think the tax cuts made no sense. It gave a bunch of extra money to the wealthiest people. It gave minimal tax cuts. I think I saw a $60 increase every other week. That's is that nice? Sure, I get extra $100 a month. I get to go out to eat a few more times. I get to pay off my student debt a little bit more. But in the grand scheme of things, that $100 to me could have done more for my community. But also the wealthiest.
And why didn't you give it to him and not go out to eat?
You got him.
I do donate $100 every month.
Did you increase your donation when you got your tax cut?
I donated $0 a month before the tax cut, and now I donate monthly.
Right.
There you go.
That's our boy. That's why we have you, man. You're consistent.
Can you up it and donate for me too?
Yeah.
Sure. And then finally, I think so. Again, that money it favored large estates. It increased the wealth dynamic. Finally, and this is the one that I agree the most on. Is one operating a higher, more accountable capital gains tax. So when people do cash out their stocks or investments, that we're taxing a little bit higher when they do cash out. Hey, hold it.
Hold on. I'm curious. Do you have a wealth limit on that, or is that flat across the board?
You mean flat across the board? So if you cash out of a stock and Jeff Bezos cash out of the stock, you would be taxed the same.
Right. Are you wanting to raise capital gains tax in general? This is the new capital gains tax, or are you wanting to have a tiered capital gains tax like we have a tiered income tax?
Yeah, in my utopian world,
or progressive,
where is easily enforceable, I would want a progressive capital gains tax. And the reason for that is that in the good argument the Washington Post gives is that investments is socially beneficial, right? But stagnant wealth is not beneficial. So it's if we are just cashing out, that doesn't make any sense. Finally, I do believe that we can increase the wealth tax specifically on assets that are stocks when inheritance occurs. So if you are so basically, say you're a billionaire, you can either do one of two things before you die. You go buy a shit ton of property, and that property gets taxed when you buy it because you're making giant sales, or you and your kids inherit that, Or what's going to happen is you simply like hold onto your stocks, you pass it to your kids, and your kids have to sell a bunch of it off to account for the new taxes. Your kids are still going to be filthy rich, but not as filthy rich as Jeffrey Bezos. They're going to be slightly less rich. So those are
a lot less rich. 50% less rich if you're a billionaire.
Did they do something for society, right? Like I think every generation has the opportunity to develop its own wealth and invest in society and reward the best thinkers of its time. It does not we should not be rewarding the grandchildren of the best thinkers beyond just a comfortable life, right? Like if Jeffrey Bezos' kids inherit $400 billion, they're gonna be fine rather than they inherited $700 billion. They're gonna be wealthier than the richest kings of all of history still. So except for the people that literally owned countries back in the Middle Ages, that's a little different. But they died at the age of 44. So those are my main arguments, and I guess like beat it up.
Beat it up.
You want to go? You want me to go?
Oh man, if I go, I might not stop.
Yeah, I think so. This is just a point of thought for future. Maybe we should attack these one point at a time so that we.
Yeah, we have to. We're working. Hello, fellow audience. We're working on this new format where each of us is responsible for presenting a topic, and the issue is that we end up presenting the topic as we say. I don't know. It's weird because we're not as conversational as we used to be.
So not to get too meta, but I chose to not do that this time only because any one of these points would take up a whole half an hour. So now I just forced you guys to
I know.
As I thought.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, do you have a list that you can like put up on screen? I didn't take notes.
Sure, I can roll them off again real quick.
I was kidding.
Yeah, give me like 5 minutes. I'll roll them all off again.
So let's just go backwards, right? So I'll start with the wealth tax. I'm curious. Do you know what the current limit is for inheritance? Don't look it up. Cheating. I see you typing. You cheater.
You're wearing glasses. We see what you're researching.
All right. So it is. Oh, you think I would not?
400,000.
Brain farted here. No, it's
That's wealth tax, right? Wealth tax. I got the wrong thing.
Okay. So you'd think I'd remember this now that I just called you out on it, and I do this for a living. I believe it's 6.5-ish million, or 5.5-ish million per person. So, a married couple basically can give their downline 11, almost 12 million, 11 point something. I think it works out to be tax free, right? There's no inheritance tax on the money that is given to your children under that amount. Mm-hmm. And it's a lifetime giving limit. When you're born, the country assigns you this limit. You can give it whenever you want. If you had the money in your pocket right now, you could just write a check to somebody for $11 million and there would be no tax on the gift. And that would just subtract from your lifetime giving limit. On top of that, you're able to give any one individual can give any other individual $15,000 a year, tax-free. So your parents could give you, your dad could give you, and then your mom could give you each $15,000. So you could get $30,000 a year from your parents, tax-free, every year. And then at the end, or anything in excess of that, then counts against this 11 million something, right?
Yep.
So if you're a billionaire, that's not a whole lot compared to the billions that is going to be tax-free. And then those billions, that gets taxed at 50%. So half of all of that then goes to the government, anything in excess of that.
Good.
I'm not trying to say that in a way that it is right or wrong or should be different. I'll
say it's wrong.
Reactions are phenomenal. Like Tim, you're like very like, yeah, you get taxed 50%. And Nate's like, oh, and I'm like, yeah. Make it more like.
Oh God.
So here's where my biggest qualms with this is. Anybody that has enough money that's going to affect can get around it. Mm-hmm. Right? There's loopholes for trusts and other things that basically get around almost all of that. If anyone is ever getting hit by that, it's because they thought they had 20 more years to live and then a bus got them or something, right? Like they just weren't prepared. And that's the part to me that is unfortunate, because that's most of the U.S. tax system, in my opinion. It's, yeah, here's the rules, and most of the time they make pretty good sense, but there's so many ways around it and loopholes and workarounds and other things that they aren't effective in what they were trying to do.
Getting politicians to play an effective game of chess, right? Because every time you move the tax policy somewhere, the billionaires move a piece somewhere else, right? And the billionaires, those are the really smart people who amass this wealth. So like you're not going to win chess against 1,000 billionaires with 1,000 lawyers at each of their disposal.
It's probably more like the people that are writing the rules of the game.
Oh, stop it. That's so cynical. Do you guys actually believe that?
No, I 100% do believe that the influence of the wealthy was widespread in our legal and political environment.
You can't tell me that all of the billionaires of the world don't have a vested interest in negating the inheritance tax by simply making sure the IRS code has been written in such a way that if you create the fun word is the annuity trust or just a trust in general, that like boom, you get to avoid it. Like billionaires are so powerful, dude. Like I saw it every day when I was in DC. Lobbyists making $200K a year so an oil company can save $1 billion. Like what's a couple $100,000 for companies that literally make a couple $1 billion every second?
Or maybe, I don't know, a billionaire businessman that owns a bunch of real estate companies becoming president and then cutting taxes on billionaire real estate companies.
This, gentlemen, how about the larger the industry that you are, aka your revenue, or like however you want to qualify it, you need a larger voice in DC, right? You need larger considerations for the larger that you are. I'm not saying.
Why?
It's like think about it. Just think about this example right here, Tim.
So wait,
do you
hold on.
need?
Should we?
Hold on.
Should California have a larger voice then?
Let me make this point.
Cali needs more senators.
No, we're not talking about the college.
No. Sorry, he doesn't support the actual populace having an equal voice. Just corporations. My bad.
Okay, just answer this, Tim. Do you need 10 200K making suited people to go to DC to advocate for you?
Yeah.
No, you don't.
I just can't afford it.
No. I'm serious. Answer the question seriously. Do you need 10 200K making suited people going to DC on your behalf every year? Or would that be a waste of your money?
It's not a real fair question, right? Like,
no,
do I have things that I would like to try and get put through Congress and put through as a law that I think would benefit myself, my family, my community, the people around me? Definitely. That would warrant 10. Right. I only get that because I don't have the money. But if I have money, if I'm wealthy, I get to influence the laws that affect everybody because I'm wealthy.
Generally, the laws that
basically what you're saying. You're like, yeah, you can't afford $1 million a year.
So I'm starting to feel like I'm losing this argument, so I'll just back right off this and we can move on.
Let me just say this: like, we as average peasants have our member of the House of Representatives that is meant to reflect our best interests, and they actually get paid about like $200K a year. The issue is that.
That's not even the concern. It's the concern is they don't get elected unless the companies back them with their money.
Exactly.
You grassroots.
No. We were just talking about this the other week, right? Like lobbyists and companies have so much power because they say, "Hey, yeah, you don't want to vote for our consolidation of oil or whatever, or you want to vote on behalf of our merger." Then fine. It looks like your wife's foundation might dry up. Like these are things that happen.
Right. Yeah, you can't really avoid that. That's corruption. I'm obviously against that. Like obviously.
Money in politics kind of breeds corruption. Like,
yeah, but again, some people's voice is their money, right? Republicans tend to give money to politicians, and Democrats tend to give time, right? So you need to balance it out somehow.
Absolutely. So, and again, this is
maybe I should run as a centrist and take your money and your time.
Yeah. Good luck getting either of those.
Right.
These are the exact things, though. That the reason why inheritance taxes have an incredible loophole. Like, there's literally no inheritance tax. Like, it just doesn't exist. Like,
it does. So, let me give some more information. 20 years ago, I believe it was a total of 700,000. something like that. I can look it up, but it was significantly less than what it is today. And I have family members that were destroyed by it. Not destroyed per se, right? I mean, but like they got hit extremely hard, right? They lost, if you want to say it that way, a significant portion of what would have been their inheritance because it went to the government. And then in the 80s, it was after that. It was even in the I think it was in the late 90s, if not in the 2000s. It started to go up significantly to where it is today, right? The thing that I have the problem with is I'm not for or against it per se. Like I think there's great arguments both ways. But if you're going to do it, you need to make it effective. That's my bottom line, right? And the problem is at a limit of like, let's say it was $500,000. At that limit, people between 500,000 and like 5 to 6 million probably are just going to get smacked by the inheritance tax.
Yeah, no, I don't.
And then once you get above that, now you're wealthy enough that you have hired the people to plan around it. So, I think they just need to plug the loopholes.
I think that I do agree with that. I don't think that we should be incorporating more individuals into the estate or the inheritance tax. In this sense, like I don't think we should lower the ceiling. I think that 11 million, like, cool, I'm good with that. I think we should just simply increase it or reduce the loopholes. Like, so either we increase that 50%, which doesn't seem to even matter because if it was 90%, the loopholes just as much exist. I'm not saying it should be 90%.
Oh, it's 40%, not 50%. My bad.
Yeah, I am seeing that right now. I was like looking at it. Same thing as well.
A little better, 10% better.
But what I am saying is that we need to close the loopholes. Like if somebody dies, they should not be able to just throw all their money in a trust. Like so, here's the moral obligation. Here's the moral argument. For the three of us, right? Presumably, we're probably not going to trigger the inheritance or the estate tax. We might get close to it in our lifetime. With retirement accounts, 401ks, all of that, it's very possible we're going to pass on millions of dollars to our future children. Which I had started this life with $0. So I think that's pretty cool. I
think that would suck.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's cool.
I mean, we all started with $0, by the way.
Yes, exactly.
I started with $0 and sleeping in a car. So,
right, yeah, $0
and yeah. Well, I guess we had a car, but it doesn't. I don't think it exists anymore. So
that's not what I'm saying.
But our children's children then will develop more wealth, right? And ideally, as long as they don't blow it and go like live off our couple $1 million for like 10 years of their life and then be poor. Ideally, our children will accumulate more wealth, develop our wealth, and pass that on, most likely tax-free. It's when our descendants are now benefiting greatly to the point that their status of life is infinitely better than ours. We won't even be around the scene. That's when it starts triggering. It's like, hey, all right, cool. You guys have inherited a bunch of money. You're doing much better. We've seen generational development. However, as a society, even though you've had upper mobility and your like lineage, a lot of other people maybe haven't. And so therefore these taxes are going to go into, often it's like a state actually. I know Connecticut and Massachusetts, New England, and mostly has a state level inheritance tax. So these are going right into your state's community. I think that that's okay. Like, I think that there's something to be said about that. Now, if one person, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, the name brand billionaires, if they've generated massive levels of wealth in their lifetime, then yeah, it automatically triggers. You're living the American dream. Your kids are still going to be living the American dream. Tax 40%. We're just going to make sure that we don't build empires. We don't want wealth empires accruing in now it happens. We have the Kennedys, the Rockefellers.
Oh, okay.
But that's what I was just going to say. Why are the Rockefellers not the wealthiest people in the world anymore? And it's because of estate taxes. It's why Jeff Bezos was able to do what he did and become who he is.
Their privileged little shit children didn't do anything with their lives, and the wealth drained away.
Yeah, but if you didn't tax it at all, if you were Jeff Bezos today, and you took everything he had, and you gave it to his son, and his son just lived a normal life, an extravagantly normal life, he would barely dent the wealth, and that wealth would just continue to grow and grow and grow. You couldn't catch up.
So who cares?
So
okay, so
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just
right.
The reason we have So here's some data before you talk. This is going back to 1910. This is estate tax, right? I like data. If you look after the Great Depression, the estate tax jumped up to this is the tax rate, not the level that it gets taxed at. Like it's not like after X number of millions.
We don't know where that level is. We don't know what the cap is.
For some in here we do, because I'll pull that up in a second. But back here I have to look it up still. But you see, after the Great Depression, the estate tax went up to taxing almost 80%. I don't know what level that is, right? But that's what it was.
Right.
And since the 70s,
it's above $10. It's like shit.
It sounds like if Chris had his way, that's where it'd be. But
I'm more like 65%, 70%.
No. It was
when it kicks in. Like if you're passing down like one of those old $2 bills to your grandkids, like, well, that's worth $11. We're gonna have to rip that in half, buddy.
Now that goes right to the government.
And so going back to 2001, you can see what the amounts were, right? And so
is that where it was the whole time?
I don't know.
Previous to 2001, I think that's what that indicates. That's crazy.
I don't know. I'll have to do some digging. But the point being is you can see that it's been steadily increasing the amount, and the top tax rate's been pretty much steadily decreasing, although it did
repealed
a little bit. Yeah.
Where did we go wrong?
Look, dude, if you're going to die in 2010.
I know, seriously.
Someone important must have died that year.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm going to look this up now.
All right, so I mean, I have a whole bunch of specific things that I want to talk about, but basically, I guess just addressing your moral argument, Chris, this is who cares? What business is of yours what they do with that money? So number one, there's something that the left gets wrong all the time that they have, like you guys. I love you guys, but you have a serious attitude about people who generate wealth in the United States. You think that you have this idea that wealth is being extracted from the middle class rather than generated by these people. And that's an important distinction, right? So without getting into this argument, maybe you can just tell me I'm wrong right now and we can get over it and move past it. But like without getting into this too much, there's the two analogies that the left and the right seem to adhere to, right? The more Marxist you are, the more that you think that Americans are sharing a pie, like a pie chart of money, and it just depends on where you allocate the money that matters. And then the people on the right, the free market entrepreneur style people are like, no, you just create new pies. So that $200 billion that Jeff Bezos has, first of all, is not cash on hand that he's going to hand down to people. That's liquidity. I'm sorry, that's not liquidity. That's the wrong word. That's stocks. That's Amazon, right? That's his shares of Amazon and all the different companies that he has. That's wealth that he has created from nothing. If Jeff Bezos wasn't here, that $200 billion would not exist, right? So it's like, to me, it's like he made that money. I do not give a shit what he does with it. Not only do I not care, but he will do the right thing with it, which is give to charity. What's this, Tim?
Just an interesting piece on wealth. You said that it's not that he's taking it away per se, right? He's generating it, and I think there's an argument there. But this is showing that the only people that have actually gained in wealth since 2007 are the top 5% or fifth.
I'm not saying there's not problems, but they certainly
nobody
else generate wealth.
The other 95th, or yeah.
If there is a zeroed out amount of money in the world. If you were to balance every debt to every sum of money, it would zero out. Like we would have a finite amount. Like there is finite cash in the world. So
then what if you then factor in assets? Because this phone that I have in my pocket was not something that was created more than 20 years ago, right? This phone is a brand new thing. This is wealth. So
you're talking about two different things, but yeah.
I'm not.
Not you. You guys.
Sorry, guys.
Talking about two different things. Chris, you were right. The currency has a fixed amount that is in circulation. That determines what the price of something is. As far as wealth, that is not the same as currency. Wealth is like, imagine that I just discovered a gold mine in my backyard that nobody knew was there, and I dug up 50 tons of gold.
Yes.
That is now
I have
wealth
something for
that
this.
exists that wasn't there before.
Totally.
Right?
So Chris, so this is one of the things that I wanted to bring up tonight. It's like every American should see this. Every
Oh my
person who
God.
is concerned with economics needs to see this thing. And I love
Please
this.
put that on a logarithmic scale.
This is one of my favorite things ever. Right? I love this.
Misleading.
It's not. Well, you can talk about why you think it is in a second. But here is a graph of world GDP over the last 2 millennia. This is basically if you want to break this down, you can get technical about what this is, but this is basically showing how much wealth is generated in the world over the past 2,000 years. And as you can see down here at the bottom, nothing's going on, nothing's going on, nothing's going on, nothing's going on until you get past like 1500, right? You start getting into Louis the 16th kind of shit.
So what you're saying is there's a correlation between GDP over time and global warming.
And capitalism. Well, yeah, I hope not, because good lord.
Well, they kind of synced, but
So look, right about here, free markets start kicking in, right? In the 1820s, right? You start to have free market economics becoming the dominant generator of wealth in the Western world. And today we have this, right? So we're all the way up here. Look at how steep that line is. That's just so mind blowing. Like we're becoming so wealthy so fast. And I just want to show. Look. Halfway down this chart is when we were born. Is
this a graph of CO2 production?
Hold on. Yeah, basically. But just hold on. Let me make this point. This is when I was born. We're generating more than twice per year. We're generating twice as much wealth as we were when I was born almost 30 years ago. We are becoming so wealthy so fast, and you guys on the left can't just keep your paws off it long enough for capitalism to keep going and make us more and more and more and more wealthy. It's insane to me. Just leave it alone. It's working. It's making us so fucking wealthy. Our poor people are fat. Leave it alone.
That's not a good thing.
First off, you're acting like he's trying to do things that didn't exist back when this all started. I just showed you a graph that showed that, as an example, the wealth tax was at almost 80% all the way up until the 70s, and then started dropping. That is a significant portion of what grew this.
I'm being much grander than the wealth tax.
But
my favorite
I understand that, but please take that into account when you look and say, okay, this curve started all the way then. So that isn't going to crush this curve per se. Also, this is called compounding growth, right?
Yeah, why wasn't okay? But before you get into that, I understand that. Why wasn't that compounded growth happening during, I don't know, the Dark Ages or the Roman Empire or the Byzantine Empire or?
All right, I'm gonna look up. Hold on, I'm gonna look up Amazon stock. I just want to show you something here.
Go ahead, look it up, Chris. What are you saying?
So I just want to say two things. Well, actually, you know what?
Apparently, Amazon stock didn't do a fucking thing all the way up until, I don't know, 2017, and then it took off. No, it has extremely good growth all the way through here, right? It was at
right. So the thing I pulled up means nothing.
It goes to $100 here. So from 1997 to, let's just go to 2000.
So what's your point? What's your point there?
My point is that because the graph you pulled up has a scale that diminishes any growth that you can see down here because it's compounding on top of each other, it looks like nothing happened back then, but it actually did.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
I mean, so Amazon's $1.
Capitalism had zero effect on world market growth.
No, I'm not saying that I'm not trying to argue that it is capitalism or not. I'm telling you that you're basing your theory off of an interpretation of data that is completely factual. So false, infactual. Yeah.
So let me just say a couple things. First and foremost, this is totally delineating from the point of this conversation. My argument is not that we have a wealthy society. I'm not trying to instill communism and get us all back to Ukraine in the 1930s because Stalin decided to, I don't know, starve a country because he thought that farmers that don't own their lands would be more productive. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. I'm saying that when somebody dies, they're no longer on this planet. We do not want wealth empires generating, and therefore, absolutely. Why not? Because it's consolidated power. That's a problem. I believe wealth can become tremendously problematic if
I'm hearing an echo. I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, there's a little bit of echo. I hear it too. I don't know if this is any better if I move my mic closer, but
I think it's coming from Nate, maybe his speakers.
Hold on, I gotta pull up Discord. Keep going, guys. Keep talking.
But let me just say this, right? Like,
No, maybe not.
There's no problem with Jeff. If Jeff Bezos, when he passes, when his time comes, for him to have to sell some stocks to contribute to the broader society, for then his kids not be as uber wealthy as he was. There's a moral conversation there. And finally, I want to say this too. I understand this, like, right? People are wealthier today than they were in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And also the poorest members of society are better off in developed countries than they were in the past. However, I do want to make one thing, Nate. That is not a good thing to me that you say the poor people are fat because they're doing so well. Because the quality of nutritious food is too fucking expensive for them to afford.
Problem. They're not starving. Can we agree they're not starving?
Sure, I wasn't starving, but my life expectancy was probably gonna be like 30.
But you're right. But you're right. News people want to use that as an incentive to get them to go back to work.
And now look at us. Now look at our country. We have the highest rate of every single problem you can imagine with health because we have a society that can't have sustainable, nutritious food. So, anyways, that's a side point. Whole other side point. We have a whole podcast on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to just make this point too, that I believe the rules of the game are partially changing. I'm not saying that we should have this massive government communist control. I'm saying that the uber wealthy should pay their fair share of taxes, and that in a wealthy society, maybe capitalism was needed to get us to where we are today. I'm not saying that to nuke capitalism. I'm saying that maybe our system needs to change slightly with modern day economics policy. Like, the reality is wealth inequality in a democratic society reduces the ability of democracy to function.
Okay, let me make this last point. We got to wrap up, and I'll let you guys talk
and then
until
the time decides. Leave a comment.
Yeah. Look, look. Here's what a wealthy person is going to do with their wealth. This is why I have no problem with it. Okay, number one, they can hoard it and be stupid, right? So they cannot buy anything. They could just like put the money somewhere, and not do anything with it, which nobody ever does.
What do you mean by somewhere? Like under your pillow?
Geez, I don't know. Yeah, probably like,
or in a box, or like, yeah.
Let's say,
so not investing, not
correct.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
They could be stupid and hold on to it and do absolutely nothing, like literally cash out, put the cash in their house and not do anything with it.
So like buy gold or like currency, or gold coins.
Gold at least appreciates in value, but kind of, right?
But
so it's not
gold doesn't do any work.
Right, it's not an active investment. So they can hoard it.
It doesn't generate wealth. It doesn't generate GDP.
I'm getting to that. So they can do that. Often they don't do that, right? Especially the people who generated those wealth, like Bezos. Bezos is wealthy because of what he created, okay? So wealthy people, regardless if they're the sons of wealthy people inheriting it, they usually spend that money, right? Or they invest that money, right? They put that money in a bank. They put it in a CD. They put it in a whole bunch of different places. They invest it in a company. They do a hostile takeover in a company, which means they put money into the company. Whatever it is, rich people usually use that money for something, whether it's goods or services or investing. And I don't think it's
space.
Or flying into space, which paid all of the people that were in that company to manufacture, maintain, and set up that rocket launch, right?
I'm just teasing.
No, it's fine. It's a perfect example, right? So rich people usually contribute way more to the economy than you or I do in the middle class, and they usually pay more in taxes, right? And
not per dollar.
Okay, fine. And they give more. They give more to wealth than you will make in your entire life. Those uber rich people. They will give. I don't care about proportionally. I don't care.
A ton.
But you guys are getting. Hold on, that hammers it down though, right? To where most of the disagreement is
absolutely
is because Nate, you're arguing on a point that he doesn't disagree with. Where the disagreement comes in is, it doesn't matter if it's proportional, right?
Right, and I say absolutely not.
I think that's the clear disagreement. Then I think between right is that you guys, and I know you guys see it this way. I'm not knocking it. yeah, like Jeffrey Bezos created way more jobs that paid way more income tax than I do. However, I can say that I pay way more income tax and donate way more to charity proportionally than Jeffrey Bezos does. Is Jeffrey Bezos' impact maybe larger than mine? Maybe, but if I kept the same proportion and I was a billionaire, it would be we would see like 3.5 million child welfare nonprofits.
I want to kind of walk a little bit down the middle of this line in a way, and this isn't on the wealth tax discussion as much as if we want to stick with Jeff Bezos here on how wealth and wealthy people and what they do impact the economy. So Nate, you've made the comment that, Jeff Bezos is that wealthy because he generated that much wealth. He developed something that made that much money, and without him, that money wouldn't be here. And I'm going to say that you're wrong.
Okay.
Some of that money wouldn't be here, some portion of that, but a lot of that money still would have been, right? If Amazon never existed, never started, and nobody ever created anything like it, if he was the only man that was smart enough to realize that this thing needed to exist, we would have, instead of spending our money at Amazon, spent it at Walmart or Target or some other store, brick and mortar, where these purchases were being made prior. It's not like he generated something that wasn't already in existence. He generated retail. He didn't generate retail. Retail existed. He did generate a more efficient way of doing it, right? So he was able to offer a product that people liked, that in some cases was cheaper, in some cases seemed cheaper, and people started buying from him. So he, in a lot of cases, took wealth away from other companies and put it into his own pocket. He didn't generate this wealth. It's not there now because of him. It would have been there before. It's just now in his pocket instead of Sam Walton. And to your point,
there's more wealth because of his more efficient ideas. That's basically how wealth is generated, is more efficient ideas.
Well, okay. So yes and no, but I don't want to argue that too deeply now. I generally agree that efficiency drives better wealth.
Literally creates wealth.
Chris, he didn't create those jobs. And in many cases, he lost us jobs by becoming more efficient, by driving automated factories, by doing all of the things that he's done to generate this wealth, by making it more efficient. He has cost jobs. A lot of people that used to work in retail don't have a job anymore because Amazon doesn't rehire them because robots. So, yeah, he is the second largest employer in the country, but he took that many jobs from other places first, right? I would argue, and I don't have the data to support this, so if this isn't true, if I do see data on this, I'll change my opinion on it, but my argument is that he has actually cost us jobs in that industry.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah,
I'd probably agree.
And that's, again, where, to me, not to berate this point, but again, in taxing the wealthy, making sure there's inheritance, estate taxes, I think these things help protect these type of dynamics this way. The reality is the government, at the end of the day, truly, and this is what I believe. You can disagree, but in my analysis, the government, above all else, is basically like a wealth navigator. It's like, and not wealth as an economic goal of a government is to say, hey, let's make sure we're managing a society and ensuring that things are going productive, society's healthy, and everything is going well. That's to me what a government is. And that's where you layer military, you layer healthcare, you layer retirement things, because we don't want people dying without money. It's also where we're now reaching a new pinnacle, a new paramount moment of capitalism, which I would say is a success to you guys and to all of us, is that we've actually generated so much wealth, and now we're also generated wealth equality. We've generated like and I get the argument you're going to make. It's like, well, new jobs are going to pop up because of innovation. Maybe that's true. I think that's part of it. But also, the reality is the government can also do wealth redistribution for things that nobody would, like build a road, unless we had like tolls or whatever. I guess but I believe there's public jobs, there's public things that are right now. I literally have a non-capitalistically beneficial job. I run a nonprofit that's funded by the government. It literally does, like, nobody makes any money. It's actually a net loss, but the gains of society easily outweigh the loss in the shortcomings through the long term. And so the government can do those types of things when it has available cash on hand, and it's also democratically decided upon. Again, and I know we want to get to the next point, but I want to make one last important
thing
for our viewers to decide upon. There's a great many articles out there now that go to show that, like, when you actually pinpoint where philanthropy goes, more often than not, it doesn't actually go to where it really it goes to the people that are most connected with that given person that is giving. So, for example, like, and that's not always true. We can always find outliers. I'm news, not just the Bill Foundation, which distributes money all over the world. I'm talking about all the hundreds of other foundations, billionaire givings that we don't see. More often than not, they go to celebrity foundations, celebrity causes, the easy go-to, the American Red Cross, whatnot, and they need money, right? But what I'm saying is, like, a lot of small-time nonprofits like mine that would get funded because of government funding, because it goes through this really rigid democratic process of bidding for contracts, they're actually left out of the loop. And so a lot of where that philanthropy could go, it never ends up. Like, if that money was taxed and then put into a giving pot or of our social services, and more likely than not would be more equitably distributed if done, like, in a non-corrupt government. And obviously this is not going to work.
Equity.
It's not going to work in Colombia, but it'll work in the United States. I do truly believe in our government. I think I'm maybe one of the few people that believe that.
All right, so I will dip a little bit into my time to say this, and let both of you respond if you want to. I have this article. I have a paper right here. I'm not going to read the whole paper. I actually can't read the whole paper. I don't have all of it. So redistributive schemes don't actually ever work. And this right here has to do with both like human behavior and just sort of general rules of mathematics. But this is the paper right here. It examines wealth distribution across societies. And so basically, if you're not familiar with the Pareto distribution, Tim, you got to love the Pareto distribution. Pareto distribution governs just about almost every natural phenomena in our world, such as, like, the height of trees or wealth distribution, or basically productivity is governed by this. Individual human productivity is governed by this. So basically it states that wealth will be distributed basically as it is right now in the United States, as in, like, the top 1% hold more than the bottom 50%. Like, that's kind of generally what the rule says. And so it's, this paper is basically this paper discusses how does a distributive scheme, as in setting up a society to be socialist or have socialist policies, or just be generally more socialist and less capitalist, how does that affect wealth redistribution? And the answer is that it doesn't, right? It usually just ends up being that an oligarchy has all the wealth and the peasants are poor, right? In the United States, it's the capitalists, the billionaires that have all the money, right? It's usually the people who kind of deserve it because they made companies, right? So it's like your redistributive tendencies aren't going to work. It's just a mathematical thing that humans stack wealth up in certain ways.
Sure, I'll make one quick comment because I don't want to steal your time. And then we'll let it up to the viewers to comment and decide. It's that I'm not arguing for, like, Russian wealth distribution, like the development of the oligarchy under Yeltsin, right? Like, I'm arguing for money to exist in general funds.
It was kind of a big point. I know you disagree with that, and Tim, you're smirking over there too. We can maybe at some point I'll actually do a segment on that part. That's a complicated topic.
We can actually talk a lot about 90s Russia.
I was only smirking because you're saying, like, oh, there's this mathematical rule that is going to guarantee that humans can't change their actions. That doesn't, I mean...
Yeah, you really? Go ahead and keep smirking, buddy.
Really? Like,
yes, 100%. We stack... Because it has to do with human behavior.
Either
we are human when we do act certain ways.
If that's the case, then how did we control our tendency to want to... to adapt to a society where we are monogamous when we shouldn't have been originally, right? You're making an argument that we can't adapt the way our we live within a society.
Correct.
But you make the
Because
counter
we're human.
argument in other times for other things.
Right, because here's the thing, Tim, and people, center, left, non-political people who don't know like biology, they don't get this. We're not spirits floating through the universe. We're biological creatures encased in meat sacks with brains that have very specific circuits. So we act in certain ways. And the behaviors that we exhibit in the real world on a massive scale, even out to this is how we organize ourselves in hierarchies. We always do this no matter what. Even if you think you're getting rid of a hierarchy, you're following the guy who's getting rid of the hierarchy, and then you hierarchy under him. Right? We as humans, we always do this. We will always do this, and you cannot change this about us. And that's for another podcast. So
yeah. So before you get into your topic, I just want to close out something that I had said earlier. Laura Ingram said this: "What if we just cut off unemployment? Hunger is a pretty powerful thing," and she's talking about driving people to work and go back to work. That was the comment that I was referring to. If you hadn't heard that one earlier, so
yeah, it's the carrot or the stick here, or it's that's the natural state of society. You have to work for your living. You gotta work for your food. That's nature.
It used to be. So no, it's we should have a discussion on. I'll stop it at this, but we should have a discussion on in the future the difference between like progressivism and conservatism in a way, because in general, right? Like,
have we done that on air yet?
I don't know.
We opine about that a lot after the podcast, usually.
Yeah, I don't think we have, because I think that'd be an interesting one, because that goes back to this, right? Like your basic belief is like, this is how it's been, this is how it has to be. And Chris's belief is this is how it's been, and we can always improve on it. Let's do that.
Basically,
and I kind of walk the middle line, like, yeah, some of these improvements are stupid, and some of them are good.
In the wise words of I had this one professor at Yale who was Harvard, who was one of my favorite professors, and he said something to me, and I'll wrap the point. It was like, he's like, when we look at the people who are poorest in society, who maybe even don't even contribute to society, there's one of three things you can basically do. You can kind of do nothing and then, leave it up to their own. You can help them, or you can like commit genocide. That's basically the three things that the leader. Nothing. You're Hitler, you commit genocide. You're Stalin, you commit genocide, or you do nothing. And I'm on the side of the fence, like, we should probably help out.
All right.
I'm not saying that you're Hitler, but
I don't think either of us are the genocide side. I don't think
nobody's the genocide side, and actually nobody's actually on the don't help them either, right? So I'm a proponent of charity, and you're a proponent of welfare. So
I'm a proponent of don't help them at some point. Like, at some point, you're responsible for yourself. Now
we'll get into it. Yeah,
help for a while, right? Help for a while.
For what it's worth, my point is humorous. It's meant to have like a little bit of shock value, dark humor to it. But I always appreciated his thing. So, anyways,
So Nate, you want to talk about philosophy?
Yeah, well, ish. This is more of a cultural issue. So again, nothing like a good crisis in Afghanistan to throw things into perspective. But I wanted to talk.
We were going to talk about these before the crisis.
Yeah. Well, I think it was unfolding. Whatever. All right. So I've only got about a half an hour left here. We'll probably take the full 36 minutes. So since we started 6 minutes late, but
we'll just put another quarter in the machine. We can go a little longer. Yeah,
exactly. Okay. So what I want to talk about tonight is a little something called neopronouns. This is a leftist. This is, let's say, a left cultural trend. This is the practice of having a gender, or let's say a gender pronoun other than he, him, or she, her. And these can take the form of a couple different things. So if we look at this right here, I pulled up the Sandy Dandy website. So just some examples of some of these weird pronouns.
I need to print one of those out and carry it around with me.
I know, you can put this card in your wallet. So instead of he, him, or he or she, you can say Z. Instead of him, her, you can say Zim. Instead of his, her, you can say Zer, Ziz, Ziz self, right? Or you could do see, hear, hears, hear self, or am, ear, ears, ear self. the list goes on. And these are just a couple examples that they have listed here. So I'm kind of curious, Tim. What did you know about? Did you know anything about neopronouns before I told you that I was going to be doing a podcast on these? And what did you think of it? If you did,
I kind of knew that they existed, and other than that, that was about it.
Okay, Chris, I'm assuming you knew about these. Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, I was familiar, especially with the Zay Zim Ziz thing. I did know about that one.
Do you have a Zay Zim Ziz in your immediate circle?
No, I do not. I do recall hearing a presentation from a while back with trainings that.
Well, okay, so one of the things
Z though, this is important.
Like
X or Z, like Zay as in ZE or XE.
Right. They don't have those ones on here.
The problem is with that is you have to be trained in the language of learning how to pronounce it, right? It's like, oh, there's a line above it. What does that even mean? You have to be trained.
Yeah, exactly. No, most of these are just regular English. So I want to ask you, so one of the things that, Tim, you brought up, and maybe we can talk about this a little bit right now before I get into the full shebang here. Like, obviously, I have a problem with this, and I keep tabs on the cultural left, and I buck back against all the weird shit that they're doing, and I have a problem with it. Now, I'll explain mostly why I'm against these neopronouns or the usage of them in a second. But Chris, from your perspective, I'm curious. Tim thinks that this is not too big of a deal. He thinks that this is not widespread. Not trying to put words in your mouth, Tim, but I think I have you pretty accurately pegged. You think I'm basically nut picking, right? That this is not a big deal. That not a lot of people are doing it. Would that be your assessment, Chris? Or how widespread do you think this is? Do you think it's going to gain steam or lose steam, or what?
Interesting question. I guess it's relative. I think that to me is that the maybe not relative. I think that to me, my approach is this. I fully respect anybody's wishes on their preferred pronouns, what they like to be called. I think that it's like zero harm on my end to simply, like, I don't know, throw in my email line that I prefer he, him, his. Like, right? God forbid, right? Like, maybe I understand that some people will be more like orient, and I apologize. I realize like I might butcher some of this, but it's like someone's gonna go ahead and say it, right? Like if someone female or they're actually a dude, or if they're a dude or if they're a woman and they look more like a dude, like I guess it's helpful, right? To like have he, him, his, or she, her, right? Like I think that's helpful, right? I think it is like genuinely helpful because like
boon to all the androgynous people in this country.
Sure, right? Like let's support the androgynous people. And if somebody wants me to refer them in a particular way, then I just need to know first. Like I don't want to be I don't think anybody should be like slapped for
right. You're kind of getting into the argument a little bit, right?
Yeah, we can dispense with that right now. So I'll just say up front to anybody my argument's not going to be, I'm not going to be trying to find the people that, like are mean to you when you don't know it at first. I think that you shouldn't be expected to use anybody's weird pronouns at all, ever. Not just the ones who, not just
don't call them weird. Maybe
I do. I called that to me. This is not the views of the Break the Silo podcast. This is my view.
How about we say new pronouns, not weird pronouns? Just
a couple sentences, Chris. I'm just curious. Again, do you think this is widespread on the left? Do you think it's something that's a fad that's going to go away? Is Tim justified in say that I'm nut picking?
So let me put the words in my own mouth so that you can hear them while you think about this, Chris. When he told me he wanted to talk about this, I said to him, "Why do you keep picking topics that aren't really that important?" And
yes.
And saying that out loud, it makes it sound like I don't care about this particular topic or the people that are ingrained in this, and that wasn't my point.
That's not what you meant.
My point is that it isn't very impactful to the vast majority of society, and if we're trying to have discussions that impact a bunch of people and that are interesting to people, then why pick this one? Was more my point, and so. My argument was that this isn't really a big topic. It's not something that affects a lot of people, and then those people that it does affect, most of them don't even really care about it that much. Some people do. Some people are very strong and very adamant for this. But it's a very, very, very small group of people.
We'll kind of talk about that. Right. So we'll kind of talk about whether it is or isn't important in that sense as I guess I go through my arguments.
Yeah.
I'm just more curious right now, I suppose, from Chris, again, like, do you think it's going to be widespread? Because that's one way it can be kind of important.
Your question is
widespread,
your question is, do you think that this is a forest fire in the starting, right? Is this the campfire?
Right. Is this going to take over? Are we eventually all going to be using pronouns in our emails? Do you think?
Oh yeah.
If you had to guess.
Yeah, I do.
I think so?
Yeah, I think everybody will start identifying pronouns in their emails or relative. I've noticed it's becoming more and more the norm. I have mine in my email. I think that is like that will probably happen, but I don't think it's a forest fire.
Okay, that's. I want to make sure I understand this. So, Nate, are you asking that we all start using pronouns in general, or that we are going to start seeing these non-historical pronouns being used?
A little bit of both.
Often?
Well, usually the only reason for Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. Usually the only reason why you put your pronouns in the email is because you expect that you're going to run up against somebody who has pronouns that need to be declared.
Not really. I think it's kind of one of those like. No, not at all, honestly. I think it's just one of those things that like it's helpful. Like it's like I think part of it is
your signature Mr. Chris blah blah blah.
No, I don't have Mr.
So where is your pronoun in your email?
My emails usually goes like Chris Scott, my title, executive director.
Right, so your pronoun's not in your email.
It's in my signature. It says like
Mr.
he, him,
Chris
his.
Scott.
I can probably show you guys what it looks like.
I'm confused on how, like, because I know that we use them like, Mr. So and so.
No. What you do is you write he/him, and that's how you say that my pronouns are.
Oh, you have that in your signature. You say he, him.
I do.
Chris Scott.
It looks like So actually, it says my name. Then the next line is Sun Scholars. Then the address of my nonprofit. The website, then pronouns he dash him dash him.
Okay, so you have that as a separate. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I was asking. I was trying to understand.
So, needless to say, like Tim wasn't too hyper aware of this issue before we brought it up here.
No, so let me say two things. I share it more because, for one, I work in child welfare, and in child welfare, there's an overrepresentation of youth who are LGBTQ. It's quite normal. It's just simply there's more LGBTQ foster youth than there are if you just to match that to the general population. The same is true about Black and Brown communities. There's more African American, Black, Brown foster youth than there are in the general population. When you control for all the fun stuff that are numbers, and so I just find that it's valuable to kind of let me phrase it this way. In my office, I have like banners of every college in the state. I also have like a pride flag. I also have a South Korean flag because one of my students is South Korean. I am a straight male and I'm not South Korean and I haven't gone to 15 colleges, but it adds a level of comfort when those people come into the room. And that's my choice as a business as well. Like it allows, like it brings those walls down. I wouldn't want this to be mandated, right? Like I just as if I wouldn't want every single organization to have every college flag to make sure all their employees feel like welcome. But I do think that in college actually is a choice, whereas like these things are not. But nonetheless, I want to make sure like the LGBTQ community that are my students and are out in the world feel welcome when they see an email from me and see and it doesn't hurt me to do it. It's like, yeah, cool. It does. It makes me happy that I can make sure other people are all right and they feel welcome, and so that's why I add it. I don't think there's ever gonna be a mandate. I don't think you're gonna see like on your driver's license. Well, you already kind of does on your driver's license. It says M or F, so.
So all right. So that's kind of what I wanted to get into. We probably shouldn't dwell on this too much because I just want to demonstrate that this is starting to become law in places. This is also part of my answering your question, Tim, about like why am I talking about unimportant things? Because I actually kind of agree with Chris. And I do think, even if he doesn't agree to the extent that I do, I think this is something that's going to be continually pushed. I know that it is something that is pushed in colleges, and it's starting to show in real life places like California. Even though I know it's not actually California is not technically real life, But they do have.
I'll concede to that point to a degree. I just want to give you the data that I looked up to back up what I was thinking, and it kind of supported what I was thinking. So I kept thinking that. I looked up, like, okay, in my mind I was like, who really would be interested in these other pronouns? And right, it would be non-binary LGBTQ, right? And so I looked up what percentage of LGBTQ are non-binary. And if I remember correctly, I had all this data pulled up for several weeks in a row, but I didn't pull it up again this week. I believe it was like 14% or something like that, right? So 14% of LGBTQ identify themselves as non-binary. Of those non-binary, how many want to identify themselves with different pronouns? And that was, again, in the like 10% range or 30% range. Anyway, it worked out to be that less than 0.5% of society are actually interested in using non-gender specific pronouns to identify themselves. And
So
of
then-
that 1/2%, they are not all adamant. They're just like, yeah, okay, sure, that'd be great. Some of them are that way. Others are like, no, I need one, right? I want one that because it really is important to me.
So
that's where
let's
I
do
backed
a
up
quick
my-
moral question then, right? So we have California. I have a bill right here from California. This is already passed in 2018. They can now put 3 genders, which is male, female, non-binary. So that's in law. In New York,
fine.
if you have a business, the business can face up to $125,000 or let's say $250,000 for violations of willful, wanton, and malicious conduct. So if you intentionally misgender somebody repeatedly, despite their request, you can be charged civilly. You can be fined.
Despite their request, right? So this goes towards saying, look,
been
this
made
is
known.
what I've told you. I want this, and you continue to do this.
All right. So are you excusing that? Is that okay to be fining people for being rude?
Yes. Well, it's discriminatory. It's not rude. It's discriminatory.
Okay, but that's first of all,
I'm-
Chris. That's assuming that non-binary gender is an actual thing and not just like you're kind of a little crazy. And that's actually kind of the crux of it, I suppose.
Well, I guess I think general consensus is that, you know, being non-binary, we actually know this. I wish I had my laptop because I'm on the Mac now, and
I had
this.
to interrupt you. Sorry, I want to make this clear because it gives an idea of where I'm at on this. I wasn't like that aware of the word non-binary before all of this.
I know.
I do just want to say there's academic papers that I pulled off of Harvard Medical School, a few other places, like really good sources that do show there actually are birth normalities where it's possible to have a non-binary birth based on matching of XY chromosome to XX to YY to like
okay, so all right, so I just want to be very clear about this. Hold on, I just want to be very clear. I don't actually. We've never had this before, so I'm going to give you a pass here. So I'm not talking about physical birth defects. I'm not talking about intersex people. I'm not talking about people who have something that was, some sort of genetic abnormality that resulted in this. These are the edge cases. And generally with those edge cases, I would say 90% of the people either fit male or female profile. And they should probably try to live as such, right? Because it's just easier than changing the entire society for it. I would, however, say that... All right, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like two things. It's like one, we just don't know that. That's like hyperbole. Like, right, we don't know if like, you know, this dynamic of non-binary people truly are just like you said, like they had a biological sex that was like very identifiable assigned to them at birth, and they've since like realized that like, you know, maybe they want to transcend and go to a different gender identity and whatnot, or if it really was like, you know, you had individuals with a mixture of chromosomes and whatnot at birth. These are fully functional people. It's just like they're born like not knowing the gender at birth. It's quite normal, actually.
So, all right.
But let me make one other point. Is that I don't think in these cases adapting society is a bad thing. It's kind of like this. What if like there was only 0.01% of black people in the United States? Would that then make it okay to discriminate? It's like, well, it's only 0.01, so like why not? Like who cares, right?
Sure.
No. But you're
it's
not
different,
talking about discriminating. You're talking about. So I'm I want to be clear about, before I answer that, I want to say, I'm not saying because it's a small percentage, it's not something we should consider as a society.
He just thinks you just think I'm taking like edge cases where we probably should be talking about something more important.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And more important isn't even the right way to put it.
But not important to the people. Like this is not an issue. Why do you care about this space? Right. Why do you care about this so much, basically?
But to that point,
Tim, go for it.
To that point, though, of you saying like, well, should we be allowed to discriminate against somebody because they're a small portion of the society? No. But I don't think that Nate's argument here is that we should be allowed to discriminate against non-binary people. I think his argument is that is it discrimination to use term like the language that we have, right? I mean, is that or Nate, you can expand on that. Like I'm probably putting words in your mouth.
That's basically it. But let me go into this argument because it kind of ties into this, and then we can talk around this point that I want to make here. So. Sure. This is actually, now we're kind of getting to the first point that I had for this, which is, and this, I would say this to anybody who is choosing, let's say, I mean, the phrase would be choosing another gender, but let's say choosing to express themselves with another set of pronouns. There is no utility gender is distinct from sex, generally speaking, right? So we can maybe exclude the transgender case, but there is no utility linguistically of attesting to being this different gender, right? Because basically what people want to know is like, are you a male or are you a female? That's basically what people want to know. And all of this other stuff, basically this gender that you, first of all, I don't agree that you have. I really think most of this stuff is made up. It's essentially searching for, I mean, there's a gender out there right now, which is, oh no, it's a sexuality. I'm still going to say it though. There's a sexuality out there where this woman claims that she is a person who only gets sexually aroused when she's in a romantic relationship with somebody. It's like, yeah, you're a woman, right? That's how women generally speaking are. And obviously I'm being, yes, I know. Okay. That's not my point. But basically, there is no utility to this. It does not matter to me what's going on inside of your head. It's like saying that you need to put down in your email line how your mental state is that day. Like, yeah, I'm angry. I'm a little bit pissed off. I'm a little tired because I haven't been getting too much sleep. It's like putting all of that stuff in your tagline. It's just, it doesn't, there's no, that's more useful than this. And I'm going to say this, it's kind of like your made up gender, most of them. Right. So like there's no use to it.
So like I'm not going to say that there should be like 2,000 different genders. That doesn't make sense to me.
Which there are though. So like,
well, I've read it. That's why I said 2,000, right? Like I know the figures, right? I'm not saying that that's what I support. What I am saying is that I do agree that we should have a non-binary option because there generally are non-binary people. And if someone chooses because they find that they are actually transgender for whatever means or reason.
Well, hold on. So I know you believe that, and it's because you're not. Wait, so let me ask you this directly, right? This is my point here. What utility is gained in addressing these people by anything other than him or her? What does that do for the person aside from indicate that they're in a club and that club is the leftist club, that they're LGBTQ?
It's not a club. I mean, I'm sure there's.
I'm being hyperbolic. I'm sorry. I don't mean that but I mean, us on the right, we do believe that. Like, well, you're basically virtue signaling. You're saying that I am part of this movement. Yeah, I am LGBTQ.
I'm hoping that I could. That's why I'm tackling this with a little bit more warmth in my voice. I'm not coming this as like I want to be able to feel that you and other people can honestly speak, because like otherwise we're never gonna like talk at all. We're never gonna have like compromise or consensus or get anywhere. Mm-hmm. So I do respect and thank you for sharing like where you're coming from. I would say that it's not a choice, right? Like this, someone being born non-binary. I interpret this. A lot of people on the left interpret this as like people are truly born non-binary. People are also.
What's your evidence?
What was that? The research papers, right? Like people are literally born with like different chromosomes, right? Okay. That's so. Let me continue this though. Go ahead. If you ask me specifically, like point blank, what does this do as utility for people? And what I would say it does for utility as people, like if somebody was transgender and they identify as non-binary, and now that they can put binary as a job application, it just it's a very simple thing for the rest of us to do to make these couple 100,000 people feel really welcome and like acknowledged, and that does a lot for humanity. I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but it's like, I don't know, there's something that whenever I go to fill out, like, I don't fill out job applications anymore. Back in the day when I was applying for college, all these things, it kind of sucks when it's just like, oh, I can't like put down like my true ethnicity or my true race, right? Like I always wanted to be able to do
but you stop thinking about it in 2 seconds. Look, because again, because we're pressed for time. I mean, like what does it, aside from making them feel good because they've been told that this will make them feel good, what does it actually do? What useful meaning does it convey to the person other than the pronouns?
Their identity, and like identity is everything in this world. It matters.
Okay, but I don't put my entire identity in my email address. I put
let me ask this another way.
License, on your passport, on these things. Like, so if someone's not male and they're not female, let's just give a non-binary option. It doesn't hurt anybody.
But they are male or female unless they're intersex.
If we're trying to move towards equality of everything, right? Women, female, or women and men, the same, doesn't matter. It's equal opportunity, equal everything. And the same thing for if you're non-binary. Why don't we just remove gender pronouns? Why add 2,000? Why not remove them?
There's no need. Because why would you? Hold on. Because that provides information right there.
Let's go, Mr. Efficiency. If it isn't important to have a gender pronoun, why not remove them?
Because men and women interact differently and behave differently. So knowing that somebody is a male or female is added benefit.
Okay, so would you not agree that somebody that identifies as non-binary will act differently than a male or a female?
Yes, but it's not the way that they think. It's that they're going to be a crazy leftist, and that's it. There's no other defining feature to the gender.
So your argument is we should keep gender pronouns in general because people act differently based on their gender, but and you agree that non-binary people will act differently based on them being non-binary, but we shouldn't give them a gender pronoun.
Again, it's. Go ahead, Chris. I know.
I have met Republican non-binary people, so they're not all on the left. I think that again, all races, genders, whatnot, sex that we're born with, including non-binary, it assigns a portion of our identity and also is meaningful pieces of information for because I
well, hold on. Can I have you hone in on that? What identity what? Okay, yeah, sure. What does a fey self? How is a fey self different, right? And something that's not like, again, here's the problem, because you can give me some answer about that, but the answer is going to be bullshit. Right, they're just a little mentally ill. And there's nothing wrong with that. Mentally ill.
I promise that. Okay,
what I answer, Chris, or they're indoctrinated.
Let me just make one really big important thing though. Is the reason why we want to know if someone's non-binary, if someone's male, if someone's female, is like we're collecting data, and data is important. We need to know like what's going on in society. We need to go about trends. Like when I fill out the FAFSA,
what data does FACELF impart?
I'm sure when you guys fill out the FAFSA, you're like, why the F is the FAFSA asking me if I'm a ward of the state? It has zero application to you. But for people like me and the very small minority of people in the country, that it's really important for colleges, for job applicants, for the federal government to know that I was a ward of the state.
Right, and I understand the utility of that. There is a utility to that.
But then we also get to figure out other unique things. Like, okay, and maybe there's trends that we just don't know about. What is the rate of employability or home ownership for people that identify as non-binary? Are there negative trends associated with this? Are there positive trends? There's things we just need to know. And so that's where, to me, it's like, it's data collection.
Okay, so in the census, you add this thing, or in the data collection avenues, you add this thing. But does that require it to be added to emails?
It's not. I'm not saying that you should do that. I'm just saying I do that because of my area of work. I think if I
right. So you find value in also adding it for inclusion, which is the point I think that was more of what Nate was saying than data collection. So I have a question for you though, Chris. So you had said this is important for identifying who you are. If you're from Texas, do you think that that's something that you would use to help identify who you are? And do you think other people could use that to identify how to interact with you?
Absolutely.
Should we put "I'm from Texas" in our emails?
It's semi-presumed, but like we have it in our license plate, we have it in our driver's license.
No, I can move from one state to the other. My wife is from the Carolinas, and she lives in Ohio now.
And all those things change, right? You change your driver's license, you change your passport, you change your license plate.
But it's part of who they are. It's part of their identity of who they are and why they are who they are and why they act the way they do. If I see a guy walking down the street who's wearing a big, gigantic, 50-gallon cowboy hat, I'm going to look at him and be like, what the hell? But if they had a sign on the back that said, I'm from Texas, I'd probably be like, oh, now I get it.
I bet that Senator Ted Cruz definitely lists that he has like Texas in his email or on his Twitter username or his Facebook, so I think that it's like inclusive.
That's value add information for his particular occupation.
Yeah, absolutely.
My point is though that
me writing my pronouns in my email and my particular occupation, where I do know there is an overrepresentation of LGBTQ community, that it serves a valuable purpose.
So I'll
hold on, 10. Can I just hone in on that right there? Because you just made my point. The value add for you putting them in there is not so that people know you're he, him. They assume that because 99.9% of people use regular pronouns.
Sure.
The value add for you was to signal that you were part of their club, that you were an ally, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So that is the whole. Even for those people, that is the value add. That's it.
Sure. I don't think that the club though is the right word. I think that has a connotation.
I know. I'm sorry. I don't know how else.
You're fine. I'm just saying. I'm just speaking from where we stand and where our beliefs are on the left and people who are like-minded and whatnot. I'm just saying that we see it as this isn't a club. It's not a choice for someone to be trans. It's not a choice. There's actually.
Well, hold on. I'm not talking about trans people. I'm not talking about. We're not having that conversation.
Pronouns specifically. So it's not
even pronouns for trans people, I would call a trans woman a woman, right? So it's
just
pronouns for these.
But a large minority of non-binary people are trans.
Yeah. So I think
from what I was reading,
I think I might be wrong on this, but I think
that
part
could
of it
be
is
wrong. But from what I was reading, that's what I got.
I think it's not even So I'll be honest. I've never once in my entire life met somebody who goes by one of the more obscure pronouns. Never once. What I have come across is somebody who's more androgynous or somebody who is trans, who's made a transition from men to women. And honest to God, people just don't know how to identify. They don't know if it's a he or a she. And so it's just one, by me adding my pronouns, it's a level of inclusivity. And then when they disclose oh yeah, I am a woman, and then I know it's and they go by he, her, whatever, I know I just know how to refer to them. It's they're just being emphatic. It's a level of being emphatic, right? It's saying maybe it's a man who transitioned to a woman who there's still a sense of obscurity and people confuse, right? Because that's normal, and I don't think anyone can knock anyone for that. So they just say, hey, I am a woman, I identify as a woman, and I go by he, or I go by her, she, and whatnot. So I think that's where it comes into. I've never once, though, to be honest, and to make a point too, California's crazy. Even us on the left are really worried about California. I think by far and large, California seems like a beautiful place to visit, but very few of us want to live there.
That's why
millions of people want to live there.
No, they're leaving. A lot of people are leaving.
I know. They're going to Texas.
But there's a lot of tax issues for that. So one of the things I wanted to say a couple things. One was there's a lot of things that determine our identity that we don't go out and specifically put in front of us in everyday conversation, right? I don't come out and say, oh, I have German heritage, or I immigrated here from this country, or right?
Yes, that I'm a Viking.
You are what you are. But those things, let's talk about religion also, right? People that are Jewish, for an example, at least in my experience, are some of the tightest knit community for that. They don't walk around and just be like, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm Jewish. Or you don't put in your email signature, Jew. You don't put these things that extremely...
Unless it's relevant, right? Because if you're a rabbi, you might
define who you are or how you identify. So I feel like some of the things that we don't say already in culture are more indicative of how we identify than what this non-binary gender description would be. And so it's weird to me that we have jumped to this as the one that we need to start putting in our signature. I'm not against it. Don't take me the wrong way. To me, it's an interesting leap that we went to there first.
Sure. Well, I think if it's fair to say, I think where the left, if I can criticize the left on one thing, I think most people on the left couldn't sit in this conversation. I think just like what you would say, Tim, just now, people would like attack and be like, I don't understand how we got here. And I bet people would like freak out. And I'm just saying, like, I think that's wrong of the left, is like we shouldn't freak out. I think it's actually important to like question, like,
what I said that would upset the left.
I think it's like say just the whole notion of this conversation of like questioning, like, yeah, I'm for this, but I don't know why we're doing it. People are like, well, why don't you know why we're doing it? So that's where I think my role is here. Like, I want to call out the left, my fellow lefties.
I know, and I really appreciate it, Chris. I know I know I can tell when I'm offending your sensibilities. I know this is one of those conversations. You have a really thick skin, and I appreciate it. I do.
Well, hey, we need to have these conversations, right? Because it's like you should be allowed to question things. I'll never forget. I knew this person who was running for a state rep position. I might have shared this before, but I'll share it again because it's valuable. I'm sure we have new viewers. Like, I remember they were running, and there was an individual who asked them, like, after their speech, hey, I heard you say something along the lines of intersectional feminism. Can you explain to me what that means? And this person blew up on them, like, how dare you not know what intersectional feminism is? How dare you, you bigot? And like they went all off on them. Thank God this person didn't win even the primary. But it's like, I believe in intersectional feminism. I think it's really important to talk about it. Intersectional feminism is when somebody is like kind of caught in between the hairs of like multiple different like forces of like, hey, I am African American and I'm a woman. And if those are two things intersecting, it means like you're dealing with the impression of being a woman and the oppression of African Americans in our country. That's a side point. So I don't want to go on that rabbit hole like that, but I'm making the point of like, that person could have explained it to this older man who's clearly like, in a manufacturer, like he was wearing like a shirt from one of the manufacturing plants.
Yeah.
Like, you just lose out on potential allies. I bet this person would be like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Cool. Sounds good. I'm going to have a beer now. Instead of like, wow, screw you, I'm going to keep voting Republican now. So right. I think that that's where it's really important for us on the left to have these conversations and say, yeah, you may not know why this is happening now. You're probably cool. That doesn't affect me that much. Might as well keep doing it. But what the left does is they blow up and then things grow out of proportion. And it's like all of a sudden, like, gosh, no, I'm not going to put pronouns in my email because every time I talk, someone punches me in the face.
That was one of the points that I didn't get to tonight. Was basically fuck you, because there's more to it than that. But it's like, the progressives grab linguistic territory, and like us, especially us politically active right wing people, we're just like done with it. It's like, no, I'm not calling you some weird ass shit. Like, no, I don't see any point to it. Why would I do that?
I can't help but think that.
See, I don't take that stance at all. My stance.
I know you don't. You are so high in openness.
My stance isn't at all like, oh, I'm not going to call you that. My stance is it's your responsibility to let me know what you want to be called.
Totally.
And it's not my responsibility to know what you want to be called. So if for some reason I say the wrong thing, if you walk up to me and you introduce yourself, or I say, oh, hi, Mr. Bob. And you're like, I'm not a Mr. Bob, I'm a Ziz Bob. And I'm like, oh, I apologize, Ziz Bob, right? And I support that, and I'll go along with it.
You're such a boomer.
But you being mad at me for that is wrong. Absolutely. Like, why is it my responsibility to know something that is abnormal about you? And I'm not saying it's a wrong thing. Abnormal.
Right, it's not a moral. That's also not a moral statement.
That's also a problem in society. Is like abnormal is wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just not the norm. That doesn't mean wrong, right? Like, absolutely. I think all three of us in different ways on this podcast are completely abnormal from our normal, right? Yeah. Chris, you just said an example of you and the left. You're abnormal and that you're willing to have these conversations. That is not something that is wrong. So when I say abnormal, please do not take me as saying wrong. But if you're abnormal, if something about you is significantly different than the majority, why is it the majority's responsibility to know that ahead of time, right? And to correctly identify, right? If I see somebody that walks up to me and they absolutely look pregnant and I say, oh, how far along are you? And they're just fat, I get the awkwardness there, right? But that is, their fatness abnormally looked like a pregnancy to me, unfortunately, right? Like, so
unfortunately,
that's a joke.
A man that you asked.
That's a joke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
His little beer belly.
It's Arnold. Arnold. Yeah,
I do think it's critical.
It's a joke there. That was meant to be a joke. But the point being, like, the point being is like, I'm all about identifying people how they want to be. And if somebody puts in their signature, I'm, at the end of it, it's like Ziz Chris Scott. I'll be like, okay, what the hell is Ziz? Google Ziz. Oh, it's a pronoun that I'd never heard of, and this is why he's using it. The next time I email you, I'm going to say Ziz Chris Scott instead of Mr. Chris Scott.
Okay,
right?
all right. I'm not going to point out that you repeatedly don't know how to use these. You replace it with he, him, like he, him, them. Like
you don't want to call him Mr. They replaced that.
Oh,
too.
actually, that's
Is there like a Zister?
Hold on.
They replaced Mr. too.
I closed it out. Yeah, I'm actually not sure about that. That's crazy.
They do.
I think
100%.
Sister.
Zister.
Yeah, or something like that. So let me close this out, Chris. Okay, I'm gonna put this out there as succinctly as I can. We didn't get to all the points that I wanted to tonight, but I think we kind of hit the main one, which is all of the things that Tim was talking about. He made unintentionally, slightly intentionally, no, quasi intentionally made a good point where he's talking about all these things, these other characteristics that a person can have, actually have a predictable impact on somebody,
That was
right?
Very
So if you're from, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. If you're from Texas, from his example, right, you're probably going to be warmer and hospitable. Doesn't mean that you are definitely warmer and hospitable, but you probably are. You probably also have a revolver, right? Being tall has impactful information. It means I need to crane my neck up if I'm going to be looking at you, right? Being male, female, all of these things have appreciable impacts, and we don't put all of those in our emails, right? So
what we do on our licenses.
We do, yeah, just so the surgeon knows what you are, by the way. That's really important. I didn't make this point, but it's really important for medical professionals to know whether you are a male or a female. It's very important, right? Especially in life-saving surgery.
I'm going to go on ahead and say if a medical professional can't determine that, then they should not be a fucking medical professional.
Look, if you have a mastectomy and you're a fairly androgynous-looking dude, and then you have to have open heart surgery, you got some problems, man. Right? So you better have the right
blood
ID.
test anyway to determine what blood.
Yeah, it's not instant. Okay, so I'm not going to make that point. We're not going to talk that point. But so basically,
all of the paramedics like taking the pants off people.
Look, man, you just put it on your damn ID.
Just do the old Crocodile Dundee gender check.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let me just make my damn point, and then you guys can make jokes until we're out of here. All of those things that Tim talked about and the things that I talked about, all of those have actual impacts on the way that I need to treat you, or should treat you, or should expect to be treated by you, right? I just do not see any utility in putting anything other than male and female. It doesn't mean anything. There's no appreciable.
I disagree there. Disagree.
Okay, again, aside from figuring out that you're probably, you apparently there's a couple.
Hold on. If you're willing to admit that somebody from Texas will have an appreciable characteristic generality, right? Like you're generally this, that, or the other because you're from Texas. How can you not say that you generally are going to have these types of traits if you're non-binary?
Yep. Yeah, because the trait is not what the left thinks it is. The trait is not that fey kind are particularly capricious and
it's not about what somebody thinks it is. It's that there is a distinction of the group.
Okay, the reason why they're doing something is not the reason why it's effective.
Are morons, and you may think Texans are awesome.
Okay,
it doesn't matter that I think one thing or you think one thing. It's the fact that we assign something to Texans.
So my point to you, Tim, is that it's not what they think the reason is. It provides utility, but not the utility they think it is. Like, it's not that distinguishing between Z and he is going to be useful, right? And then to you, Chris, the point is that, again, like fey kind aren't a certain way. Z kind are not a certain way. There is no appreciable information that passes along to the observer, except for, yes, Tim, that they are part of the LGBTQ community, which doesn't mean much. It's a club or a affiliation or a tribe.
I argue it means as much as that they're associated with anything else in life, right? It does describe some sort of personality.
Behaviorally, okay. So behaviorally, how are fey kind different? Behaviorally,
how are what?
Fey kind, the people who use the fey pronouns.
I'm not arguing between pronouns because I don't know.
Why?
Because I don't know enough about them.
Okay, then my question is to Chris.
So look, very, very, very. I'm in as far left circles as you can imagine, and I've actually never met somebody that goes by one of the more obscure pronouns. Like more often than not, it's someone that had a change of gender that now is just simply making sure that people understand that they are
right. And I'm excluding them. We're not having that conversation right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So in terms of license and whatnot, I imagine that non-binary at best, if you were born as non-binary at sex, then yeah, that should be allowed to be put on your license. If you were
Chris, what do you mean by born by non-binary? Is that a psychological state or a physical state?
It's a physical state. There are generally people that are born.
Okay, I'm just confirming what you meant.
Yeah, absolutely. No, really good question. There are generally people who are born. It's like 1 out of every couple thousand births. It's actually a lot more frequent than you think.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's 1 out of 2,000 if I remember the was finding.
Isn't the term hermaphrodite, or is that wrong?
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, I'm not talking about them, by the way.
No, well, I think those people are part of this group more often than not, and so.
Actually, I know for a fact. I'm sorry, I'm pushing this way past. I know for a fact that a huge percentage of them, basically have a gender chosen for them, and then they end up embodying that for the rest of their life.
I see. Yeah, so look, I'm all here for putting biological sex on your that you're born as, including binary, on a license as an identification. Pretty here for that. When it comes to social navigation of the world, whatever someone wants to be called, I'll call it. I do think that for what it's worth, I do want to say one thing. I think that the right, justifiably in some regards, not in this, sometimes on the left too, we get a little extra protective. I can't help but think that maybe it's even a subconscious thing. It's we get extra protective when there's linguistics being changed, right? We get extra protected over linguistic undertones being developed or overarched. I don't know. Think about I think about this on the right, not the center. Sometimes the far left too.
It's absolutely correct. That was one of my main points. Was language.
Tell me Ayn Rand isn't the mascot of the right, of the libertarian. It's the whole book. The whole book of Anthem is incorrect pronouns. Basically, it's
everybody keeps telling me to read Ayn Rand, and I haven't done it.
Read Ayn Rand.
Yeah, many conservatives, I think Ayn Rand shebang. I think many conservatives find those notions of individuality and then all cultural problems. You don't want massive takeover. You don't want shifts. You don't people saying we instead of I, which those are the extreme versions. So I think that this kind of clicks into that. We don't they go, why are we artificially changing a word? Why are we artificially saying we can't say this anymore? It goes against freedoms. It goes against certain liberties. I get those things. I really do. I'm just conscious tone. That's why the right gets a little extra up in arms about this. I'm just saying that this is a harmless linguistics change. If someone would ever want to be called, I'll call them. And then if a state wants to put a fine in, then people should leave that state. I think California's making a lot of poor decisions. If they want to stay in that state, then awesome. You get to craft this that's the part of representative government. If you were really up in arms against it, get elected, turn it. That's democracy at work. I think this is relatively harmless. I think it's completely harmless. I think it's, if anything, people who want to have this level of individuality and cool, I'll call you whatever you want. Just don't get mad at me beforehand. And I'll put my pronouns in my email. If someone put their pronouns in my email, cool, I know what I'm asking. And our licenses should probably have genetic because I don't see why that's a problem personally. Maybe it is, but I do think non-binary genetic denotation of birth should be included in above if it truly was an occurrence at birth. Drop my microphone now.
Yeah. Are you gonna go to work and put your pronouns in your email now?
No. Man, I had 5 things I wanted to say, and
I know. We ran a little bit over with the other topic, but
so. My general stance on this is that if you want to be called something, tell people, right? My birth name is Timothy. I go by Tim. Nobody has a problem calling me that, right? If I told people I wanted to be called Mr. Bobby Joe Bob Bob, they'd call me Mr. Bobby Joe Bob Bob. Nobody has a fucking problem with that. So I don't understand why the right has a problem with somebody saying, hey, I want to be called Ziz Bobby Joe Bob Bob instead of Mr. Bobby Joe Bob Bob. And I don't think most of the people on the right do have a problem with that. Right? I think most of the people on the right have a problem with it being mandated or put into legality.
For sure.
Or having other issues with it, right? Like, not the fact that somebody wants it. I think most people will do it. And that they're told that then they will do it, right? So I think that it's an interesting argument point, but I think at the end of the day, most people want to and do care about other people and how they feel and don't want to make them feel awkward and don't want to make them feel weird. And if somebody says, hey, I want to be called I'm an alien from outer space, they're going to call you that, regardless of how weird it sounds, or they'll go along with it. It's where I think the argument point is mostly, at least for me, is where it becomes mandated or how it's adopted into society. And it's going to be a slow thing. If it is an actual issue that needs to be adopted into society, it will happen. In my opinion, it will happen. And it'll happen in a manner that is accepting to society, right? It'll start off with the people that are most familiar with these groups and the most sensitive to them, similar to Chris, adding it to their emails or putting their stuff in there, right? Like, I don't personally put my pronoun in my email. I don't think that it's something I need to do. Sure. 5 years from now, it may be the absolute norm to start putting your pronoun in your email. You know what? We didn't even have fucking emails 20 years ago. And now an email is the main way to talk to people. So I'm all about change. I'm all about adapting to new things in society. But I'm all about doing it in a way that makes sense, right? So if it is a problem, it's going to if it is something that's really important to these people, it's going to continue to grow and we're going to adapt. I generally agree with Chris that it's not a real big problem to add these things, right? It's not a problem to add it, but on the same line, it is a problem to just add everything, right? You don't want to say, I'm Chris Scott from this state. I was born this year. I'm from this generation. I'm this sex. I like this color. My favorite flower is this. Or like, how detailed do you get before you stop defining what makes you you? And I think that, I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't add these pronouns or should. I'm just saying, like, at some point there's going to be a delineation between what makes sense and doesn't. Sure. And society will figure that out. I don't think that we need to worry too much about it from one side or the other. As far as words and adding words and creating things and changing language, it's extremely frequent. We do it all the time.
Yeah, it's still not
hundreds a good argument. Hundreds of words a year are added. Some of them because new technologies get created, right? Like if you'd asked your great grandma back when she was a teenager what the internet was, she'd have acted like you were a fucking nutcase, right? It didn't even exist. The word didn't have any meaning. Now every single person knows what it is, but that's not the same as what we're talking about. The point is, we add new words. So as things change, as cultures change, as things adapt, we also change language. There's nothing wrong with that. We need to be open to that. And I guess I'll stop there.
All right. Well, that's it from us. That was we went a little bit over there, but when do we not? So that's why you come here, because we go over, and we have very little self-control with that. So. All right. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us tonight. I enjoyed all of our talks. I think again, maybe next week we'll probably get into Afghanistan again. Hopefully not with actual troops.
Talibanistan.
Yeah, Talibanistan. So in the meantime, I hope everybody, all of our viewers in Afghanistan, I hope you're well. I hope you still have internet access next week so you can listen to our podcast.
I'm so sorry. I don't think we have internet viewers in Afghanistan. I'm really
sorry. Probably not anymore. We're too liberal for that.
Well, now they're Americans.
Oh, some of them are, yeah. All right.
Well, they're struggling.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for hanging out.
Good night.
Good night.